Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the July webinar from the IEA Clean Coal Centre. My name is Ian Barnes, and I'm going to be giving you an overview of a recent study on HELE perspectives for selected Asian countries. To begin with, just to remind ourselves what exactly constitutes a HELE coal-fired plant. Well, HELE is an acronym for High Efficiency Low Emissions, and plants falling under this category will typically have their emissions controlled by state-of-the-art technologies where pollutant gases are catalytically converted and captured, and particulates are filtered by progressively more successful technologies, typically bag filters. Efficiency gains on these plants are had by using state-of-the-art steam cycle pressures and temperatures, and currently ultra-supercritical conditions are considered state-of-the-art, but advanced ultra-supercritical steam cycles are in development which promise even greater efficiencies. Now, the potential global savings of carbon dioxide emissions from deploying HELE technologies are very, very significant. For example, if all of the coal-fired power plants operating with an average reported efficiency of around 33% was upgraded or replaced with state-of-the-art HELE using ultra-supercritical plant running at an efficiency of 45%, some 2.25 gigatons of carbon dioxide could be saved annually. Now, this figure is greater than the current CO2 emissions of India from various sources, and corresponds to approximately 19% of the total annual emissions from the power sector. Now, this slide illustrates in a little more detail the potential savings to be had by HELE technologies. For example, plants operating 800 megawatt unit size, burning typically hard coal, operating at approximately 80% capacity, which would generate 6 terawatt hours annually. Now, depending upon the steam cycle conditions employed, ranging from subcritical up to supercritical, ultra-supercritical, and looking to the future, advanced ultra-supercritical, we see the efficiency of the plant with a baseline level of carbon dioxide set at 100 units, raises from approximately 35%, going up to supercritical, the efficiency is up to 40%, and carbon dioxide emissions have fallen by approximately 13%. Ultra-supercritical, current state of the art, we're down to 4.35 million tons of carbon dioxide, an efficiency of 43%, and we're looking at almost 20% savings over the subcritical steam cycle. And once the advanced ultra-supercritical steam cycles become available, we can be looking at efficiencies of around 50% and 30% savings on carbon dioxide emissions compared to the base case. Now, the IEA Clean Coal Centre has undertaken a number of studies recently on HELE technologies. They're just summarised here for your reference. For example, an overview of HELE technology deployment in the coal power plant fleets of China, European Union, Japan and the USA is the most recent available, followed by prospects for HELE power plant uptake in the Indian power sector. Following on from that, China, a review of the policies and the HELE technology developments and carbon dioxide reductions is available, and the sort of base study, if you like, for many of these, upgrading the efficiency of the world's coal fleets to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. Now, this particular study, which I undertook, I think about 3-4 years ago now, examined the prospects for HELE technologies in 10 major coal-using countries. And one of the principal conclusions from this piece of work was that the so-called Asian tiger economies were identified as representing very strong regional growth in energy demand and having a significant coal component foreseen in their future energy profiles. And the study which I'm covering today is based on 6 countries which were selected for further study, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand and Vietnam. Now the methodology for the study set out in this slide here was to look at the coal fleet and profile it by age and technology for each country, essentially looking at the breakdown for the various technologies on the steam cycle, subcritical, supercritical, ultra-supercritical, and then to model how the fleet might develop over time to meet projected electricity demand under the best HELE scenario, deploying ultra-supercritical plants for new and replacement capacity, and then when advanced ultra-supercritical is foreseen to become available, this becomes the technology of choice. The plant retirement under this scenario is based on a 25-year retirement, which is current evolving practice in China. Emissions of carbon dioxide with and without carbon capture and storage were calculated and presented, and finally the findings were contextualized in the light of national and regional policies and influences on energy and the environment. Now this slide here shows the summarizing results for each scenario. The blue line that you see at the top of the graph is the projected coal-based electricity generation, terawatt hours per year, as projected by major sort of modeling activities globally. The red line shows the carbon dioxide emissions from the coal fleet over time, ranging from 2015 up to 2040, and the various block graphs underneath show the composition of the coal fleet, where the colours denote the different steam cycles. Green being subcritical, purple being supercritical, light blue being light blue being ultra supercritical, and orange being advanced ultra supercritical. Now, if we look at the coal use in selected Asian countries, this was the situation in 2015, where you can see that the Indonesian sector really dominates this particular group of countries. Although I draw your attention to Bangladesh, which, although very low in 2015, is now embarked on a very aggressive policy of increasing its coal use to meet projected future energy demands. Now, looking to this slide, we can see the historical electricity production from coal sources by country. And again, the Bangladesh one is very flat here, but beyond the timescale of this particular graph, this is expected to increase quite substantially. Other points, the Indonesian coal use has been increasing steadily over time, and the Vietnamese one is quite interesting too, which has shown some fluctuations in coal, but now coal use is seen as being important to meeting the future needs of the country. Turning now to the coal fleet profiles, country by country. The Bangladesh coal fleet is a very young coal fleet, really just starting out from a very small subcritical capacity installed fairly recently. But large increases planned for this, and the vast majority of this is envisaged to be based on ultra-supercritical technology. So really the sort of current state-of-the-art HELE there. Turning now to Indonesia, this fleet is much more established, a much more mature coal fleet. There's a significant amount of recent technology has been installed and new capacity planned, but this is based largely on non-HELE technology, so we're not really seeing the sort of potential gains that might be had from using ultra-supercritical technology for the new units. Malaysia, again, a fairly young coal fleet, with historically subcritical plant there, but new capacity planned is largely based on ultra-supercritical HELE technology, so minimizing CO2 emissions for that particular scenario. Looking now to the Philippines, again a coal fleet that's fairly mature, significant amount of new capacity planned, but based very largely on subcritical technology. So again, perhaps an opportunity missed there to achieve the maximum carbon dioxide savings. Thailand, again, another relatively mature coal fleet with a significant capacity planned here, but again, only supercritical technology there and not ultra supercritical. So the message really which is coming across here is that once these new units are actually built and locked into the system, it is perhaps an opportunity missed to achieve the highest possible savings on carbon dioxide emissions. Turning now to Vietnam, a very young coal fleet with much new capacity planned, and again the story here is largely based on non-HELE technology with a significant amount of subcritical plants on the books. If we look now to see how a coal fleet might evolve under the HELE retirement scenario that I outlined earlier, take the case of Indonesia with a starting point of 2015-2020, and we can see a rising demand for electricity, which is met by the composition of the coal fleet there, largely subcritical, but with some advanced ultra supercritical I should say, coming in to meet the increase in demand. Carbon dioxide emissions obviously increase with the increased use of coal there, but as we move on to the next block, we see that some of the older plants has now been retired and replaced with ultra supercritical plant, which continues to be deployed to meet the increase in demand, and the carbon dioxide emissions are now beginning to level off. Demand has leveled off, of course, but the carbon dioxide is being pulled down a little more sharply thanks to the employment of the more efficient steam cycles. Moving on to the next step, where a further tranche of plants has been retired, and again ultra supercritical plants brought in to make up the shortfall there, and we can see the carbon dioxide emissions are being kept under check. The dotted line, which has now appeared, represents the effect of carbon capture and storage, which has been assumed to be fitted to only the most advanced plants, so certainly not on the old subcritical plant. But you can see we're getting a significant saving in carbon dioxide from the capture scenario there. Taking another step forward now, we see even more plant being taken off and replaced, and this time the shortfall is being made up by advanced ultra supercritical plant, which is assumed to be available at this point. And finally, taking it to 2040, the less efficient plant has almost come off the scale there, and we have a fleet which is composed very largely of ultra supercritical and advanced ultra supercritical plants. So really almost a completely HELE fleet. And finally, we can take advantage of the HELE fleet to roll out carbon capture and storage on the more efficient plant and achieve the savings that you see indicated by the dotted line. Now, looking to regional influences, important here, and the first one is the role of coal in meeting future energy demand. At the recent sort of Paris Accord, many of the emerging economies committed to ambitious targets for carbon dioxide reduction here, and a characteristic of almost all the countries was a significant increase in renewables capacity foreseen. But demand and emissions constraints are almost certain to require additional coal capacity, and this is the kind of view of a number of industry observers around the world. Funding the plants, an interesting sort of topic here. The traditional role of the supranational aid agencies like the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank are currently predisposed to fund renewable projects. And the question posed here is, should HELE coal plants be considered under this as a pragmatic approach to meeting the future energy demand of these countries whilst minimizing emissions of carbon dioxide? We're also seeing a significant and increasing involvement of national banking and private funding for new HELE capacity. This is a very recent and interesting development which ties in the availability of plant developed by certain sort of countries with funding to introduce that plant, and we can expect to see quite a bit more of this in the near term. Looking now to key messages on the individual countries. Bangladesh, significant population and economic growth is predicted for Bangladesh, and coal is seen as vital to meeting future demand. And the consequence of this is the predicted share of coal is seen as rising from 2% to 50%. And the new and planned future coal fleets is largely based on ultra-supercritical HELE technology. Indonesia, the coal power is forecast to remain dominant in the most recent energy supply business plan to meet the projected growth needs for the country. And Indonesia's coal needs really are set to dominate the Southeast Asian region. Much greater private sector involvement in funding and operating new capacity is foreseen in this region, so that's an interesting development to keep an eye on. Malaysia. Malaysia, the growth forecast suggests that she will switch from being a fuel exporter to a net importer within the next 10 years. Coal imports, particularly from Indonesia and Australia, are likely to be significant, and with significant planned capacity increases on the books, looking to be HELE-based, this is likely to minimize the carbon dioxide emissions from this expansion in capacity. For the Philippines, again, coal is seen as important to meeting future energy demand, but there is a strong local resistance to new coal plants, with demand for coal to be replaced or avoided through an aggressive program of renewables development. For Thailand, the Thai power development plant is currently under review, and it suggests that renewable energy will be developed together with coal plants to meet the demand for power, particularly in the southern region of the country. But a little bit disappointingly, recent capacity to the sort of coal fleet has been based on supercritical technology rather than ultra-supercritical technology, so an opportunity missed there perhaps. Sorry, I'll just go back there. Vietnam. Vietnam has seen a very dramatic switch away from a planned nuclear rollout, and this is likely to be replaced by increased coal power. This switch to coal power also seems to be at the expense of plans to increase the renewables capacity. So this is a case where renewables look to be missing out compared to coal. So by way of concluding remarks, for this particular region and the economists studied, population and economic growth will drive the demand for electricity in these countries. It's also worth making the point that access to power is seen as absolutely fundamental, where a significant fraction of the population doesn't have availability of power on a consistent, reliable basis, and this really overrides most other considerations for the developments. Most of the countries have energy policies that foresee a large contribution from renewables in meeting future energy demands, but external observers such as the IEA see coal as remaining very important in the energy mix to 2050 in most cases. The new and planned capacity across the region sees a mix ranging from subcritical through to ultra-supercritical technologies, and the reasons for the differences are not clear, but cost and coal quality factors have been cited, but not altogether convincingly justified. Another reason is the grid capacity in certain areas where we're looking at a number of small islands that are only interconnected to a limited degree, and this tends to increase the focus on smaller unit size and the less efficient steam cycles. Okay, well that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening, everyone, and I'll be happy to tackle any questions there. And I'd like to point out that the next webinar will be on Wednesday the 23rd of August, and the topic will be environmental and other effects of coal mining and transport, presented by my colleague Dr. Leslie Sloss. Thank you. Okay, we've got some questions in. First one is, hi Ian, surprised at the extent of non-HELE tech plants planned. I thought it was now difficult to obtain finance for sub or supercritical plants. Also recall reading that Vietnam was to phase out subcritical. As for China, is that no longer their intent? Okay, yes, well it is surprising to see that the less efficient steam cycles are planned, and this is something which I'm trying to get to the bottom of, really. As I say, there are arguments which are made based on coal quality and cost, plus the sort of grid issues, but it does seem in some cases to be an opportunity missed. As for planning to phase out subcritical, that is a statement of intent, but at my most recent reading there was no timescale presented for this. Hope that answers the question for you. And the reference here to the WCA's recent energy equation shows that ultra-supercritical is achieving 23.1 lower emissions intensity than subcritical, but for a 40.5% cost penalty. Well, yes. Obviously in expenses where feedstock is expensive or where carbon is priced, the cost penalty makes sense. Otherwise it looks difficult to build a business case for HELE. Well, that's a reasonable comment. I mean, where the cost is significantly higher, then it can be a very difficult decision for governments to make. But the question is, do they intend to meet commitments on reduction of carbon dioxide where coal is highly likely to be a part of their future energy mix? Once these plants are built, if they're operated for 25 years or in some cases more, they're locked in. So, it's a question of investment for the future. Okay. Looking to see any feedback here. No, it's not. Nothing there. Okay. Well, nothing else has come in now, so I'd like to thank you all once again for listening, and I hope that's been informative, and invite you to attend the August webinar for Leslie's topic. Thank you very much.